Hi, I'm Rick Avery, and they're making me say this for the Stunt Pod.
Hello, and welcome. That was my David Frost. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Stunt Pod. I'm John, and over there is Blake.
Hello, Stunt Norse.
Yes, that's
You are the Stunt Norse.
the Stunt Norse.
Norse.
Oh, okay, fine. That's a good thing?
New nickname. You're a Norse, aren't you?
I am.
Boring. It was boring but true, but it's now Stunt Norse.
Oh, good. I'm glad that it's changed and it's much more
Never heard of that before.
happier. No, I haven't. No. Well, maybe I'll create a bumper sticker, and we'll see how it catches on.
In your new car, your new thoroughbred car.
Don't remind me. So, who are we speaking to today? Well,
Mr. Rick Avery.
Rick Avery. Those people who don't know what Rick Avery is,
If you haven't seen Heat, well, you must have seen Heat.
you've probably flicked through the pages once or twice. See, the English audience will understand that.
Norse joke number one. He's the guy that gets shot after the armoured car gets blown up, and he's the one that can't hear anything.
Yeah.
That's Rick Avery. But only, how many credits did he have? 400 and something stupid?
400 plus credits.
Credits on IMDb.
And he's really been associated with car turnovers a lot. I mean, he's done all sorts. He's done bike jobs.
Just that, though.
True.
He's known now in downtown South Central LA as Mr. Helicopter.
Yeah, no, because but I mean, from a stunt perspective, I mean, obviously he's done fights, he's done bikes, he's done falls, he's done fire jumps, he's done all sorts.
And none of which he intended to do.
None of which
because he blagged his way into this.
Blagged his way in.
He's not blagger.
Not a clue. Strolled in, found himself a career, carried on.
He turned down Hal Needham.
Turned him down. Who turns down?
It's like that's like Vic Armstrong coming up to you and say, "Right, stick with me, fella, you'll be all right." And you go, "No, that's right.
I'll be
Thanks,
grand,
Vic."
thanks, mate. You're very kind, but no, it's all right. You've got a big family to look after. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
So he turned Hal down, and and then later on, well, kind of just wandered about. Went, I think I'm ready now.
Yeah.
I'm ready for a close up now. But he's an extraordinary character, and then, as I was saying, has done all of these great gags, but has become and went through a big phase where he was a car turnover guy. Did car turnovers on everything, didn't he?
All in cars though, not in everything.
No, not in. I mean, in
Did
everything.
a car turnover
Car
on a
turnovers in everything,
not
yes.
a badger,
No, I see that.
a raccoon.
And one of the particular jobs that we are going to talk to him about, with a bit of luck, is a movie from 1998 called Blues Brothers 2000. Yes, I know you didn't see it at the cinema. Not many people did. But you're bound to have seen that particular turnover sequence. It's one of the biggest that was ever filmed, and everything's done for real. Real. There's not a moment of CGI in the whole thing. I don't think was CGI around. It was around, but probably in its very early stages of
I think
development.
it was around, but they could only sort of I wouldn't even say it's CGI. It was kind of like just rubbing out pixels on the frame, on the film.
There were effects, weren't they? But not in this.
It's like when he does the Ferrari thing on the M&M video. You could see where that's been rubbed out.
No, you could see the pipe had been taken over.
You could see the telegraph pole and everything being painted in. But
But
lovely chap. What a chap.
So yes, we're going to have a chat with him, and we're going to discuss the Blues Brothers 2000 stuff. We're going to discuss lots of other bits and pieces with Rick Avery, and here he comes. So, welcome to this week's show, and our guest is none other than Rick Avery. Rick, how are you, friend?
Oh, I just thought I'd take that pause because you die in radio when nobody talks.
Oh, dear. Yeah,
I did.
okay. It's
I was going to take it
always
longer,
one.
but then I was really worried. Hi, guys.
I just about had a cardiac arrest there. I just wanted to let you know. Thanks for that. That was had a moment. What fun it is having Rick Avery on the show.
I think the only guy that can get away with a long pause with silence is Howard Stern.
Well, Yeah, I must admit, from being from the Brit, it's a cocktail, the Howard Stern. Yeah, being from the British persuasion, as soon as we find a pause, we like to fill it. They're known as pregnant pauses over here. Everybody looks at each other and goes, "Oh my God, nobody's speaking. This is really awkward." Thanks very much indeed for joining us. I know you're extremely busy, currently being pampered. But thank you for squeezing us into your tight schedule. How are things with you? All right, you've been busy?
I am the most fortunate man in the world. Yes.
Yes, you are. We do know this. You do.
I am. Yeah. No, I'm busy with a lot of things, like I have most of my life, and I'm just grateful for all of it, and I'm happy and busy.
Good man. Well, it's been quite a ride, hasn't it? I must admit, and we'd like to explore some of that, if we may, with a look back at some parts of your career and before, and that interests us particularly. So, I know you served in the military for a period of time. I wonder if you want to give us a little bit of background in your time there.
Well, I didn't have a choice. It was when they had the draft here in the U.S.,
right.
And I got the letter that said greetings and report to here. So I went in the Army for a couple of years, and I served in Europe. It's funny, I didn't even really consider myself a veteran because I never saw combat or anything like that. But I spent 2 years over there and did some crypto teletype Morse code kind of stuff.
Oh, nice.
And it was I felt it was more like prison than anything else, but looking back on it,
Really?
It was a great adventure.
Well, I suppose, could it have been worse? Because it was the Signal Corps, right? You said you were in?
Yeah. I don't even know if they still have that. They probably call it something else.
They probably call it something else. You were in Europe for 2 years. We were in for 41. So we win on this occasion. And at least you're in charge of communications. We couldn't communicate for ages with our lot. So it's extraordinary. But I do know, and I know that you see what I did there. That was very good. I'm very impressed with myself for saying that. I know that you said about as far as Morse code was concerned, but you picked it up you really did pick it up, didn't you? And you got to the stage where you were top draw.
Johnny Banana.
Well,
Yeah.
It's funny. It's not something that I guess one can brag about, but when you're drafted, they give you a written test to see where they're going to put you, and for some reason they put me into this communications thing, and part of my schooling was to go to Fort Ord, Georgia, and sit in a cubicle for 8 hours a day and listen to dots and dashes.
Right.
And each day, people would be taken out of there screaming because it drove them crazy.
Just couldn't do it.
But
right.
for some reason, I was like a sponge. I loved it. And then they sent me to Fort Gordon, Georgia, where I guess I was the top Morse code sender and receiver out of 33,000 troops who went through it.
Really?
I didn't get anything special for it. But yeah, I would be copying. I had to change the way I wrote letters because I would be copying letters that I heard 5 letters ago.
Okay.
That's how fast it was.
Wow.
But yeah, it has done absolutely nothing for me in life. But to brag about it right now, I guess.
Yeah, so go on, and rightly so, I think.
Giving you that outlet.
But I mean, look at the big picture for that. 37,000 people going in, and you're one of the the top one. Why did you think that? Have you ever thought about it? Why do you think that it just became so easy for you? Are you normally a visual learner? Is that how that works? Did you manage to pick it up so quickly that way?
Guys, I don't know how I learned it because my memory is probably the worst in the world. I don't know how I became a pilot. I don't know how.
That is slightly worrying for anybody who
can't-
flies with you. You know.
I can't when I'm stunt coordinating, and it's usually more than one show. I'll get asked a question and I don't even remember reading it in the script. So, yeah, I don't know how I remembered this. It was just my niche, I guess. Fortunately, I guess being a pilot, to identify a VOR, which is a nav aid, you have to be able to hear the Morse code coming from it. So
Right.
I guess I have used it occasionally in that respect, but otherwise, no, I don't know why I did well with that.
Okay. Well, we just want to make it very clear to anybody who's ever flown with Rick that it's not an essential part of the duty.
No, and you probably lost all your listeners talking about this Morse code.
It's
you know what the Morse code right now? You should be listening to dit 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 da 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 dit dit dit, which means SOS.
In fact, in point of fact, now that you've mentioned that, I believe I bought that single in about 1981. It was the Police, wasn't it?
Don't give them ideas.
Don't give them ideas. Yes, exactly. The do da da da. Is not that the same thing? So okay, so you were successful in the army and what was it? It was mandatory 2 years.
I'm sorry. What?
Well, your draft was for how long?
My draft was for 2 years, and I think I had 3 years of Army Reserve after that to serve. But yeah, it was non-eventful. Really.
And from a physical point of view, obviously you I know that you're very fine at karate and judo. Was that picked up there, or was that from school time? How did that come about into your life?
Well, back then, and I don't really want to date myself. Martial arts was extremely new to the United States. It really didn't come here to the late '60s, early '70s. One of my sergeants in the Army was taking Taekwondo at the time and taught me some very basic kicks and punches, but I didn't actually find a school to train in until I came back to the States. Right. And I was living in Santa Barbara and went to a school that was there. It was a Kempo karate school, and I trained there until the owner, Paul Wagner, God rest his soul, offered me a chance to buy the school for $1,000.
Right.
So I quit college, broke my mother's heart, and bought the school.
And on the strength of that, started with classes. I mean, it was pretty successful, I believe.
It was successful. I mean, I owe my whole movie career and everything else in life to that school and learning the martial arts. And I got a lot of connections through that and a lot of experience. And I would compete and fight every weekend, driving down to Los Angeles or Vegas or places like that, San Francisco. And it was pretty successful.
And from a timeline point of view, I'm just trying to put everything in some sort of order here. Was this was did you meet? I know one of your mentors was Alan Gibbs, wasn't he? So I'm just wondering if that was around that sort of time, or was that after you came out of the police force?
Well, actually, my timeline was I got out of the Army. Prior to the Army, I was kicked out of college because my grade point average was D-.
Oh, okay.
And they sent me a letter and said, Rick Avery, your grade point average is so low. We would like you to not come back. So,
how very polite.
Words, I was kicked out of Santa Barbara City College, but when I got out of the Army, I was more of a responsible person, and I made the dean's list, and I was able to get my 2-year degree. I went over to Cal Poly University, was accepted there, and I was one semester short of graduating when the school was offered to me. So this was before police, before stunts.
Okay.
And that's the timeline for that.
But you said that you'd made some connections there. Were they industry connected even back then?
Yeah, it's funny. There was a guy named Kim Kahana who was in the Stuntmen's Association, and I met him while I was competing. He's a martial artist. He had his own school in Chatsworth, and I was invited to his home one day, and I saw on his wall, we all have these I Love Me walls, us stunt people, right. And it's pictures of our stunts and pictures with actors, and I had never seen anything like it, and I was blown away by it, and I asked him about it, and my first thing out of my mouth was, how do you get into something like this? So he told me and said he could help me if I would come down and train with him. So I did. It was all free. I learned how to do some high falls, how to do some 2-punch fights, and basic stunt work like that. It never came about. I never was able to get my A card, as we called it. Right. I didn't even get any extra work, to tell you the truth. And so I went back and just continued with my school and gave up the idea of being a stuntman.
Okay, so you So you had an initial bite of the cherry with Kim Kahana, of course, who still has schools today, doesn't he?
He does. I think he's down in Florida. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you did join the Santa Barbara police force.
Well, yeah, I gave up on the stunt idea, and a good friend of mine was a policeman at Santa Barbara, and so I applied and was accepted and went to the academy and became a cop.
Now,
so back then I was basically a policeman. I owned my karate schools, and I did security work at local restaurants and local strip bars and places like that.
Anywhere that would have you, right?
Is that a costume?
No, I don't. I think on the door and that sort of thing, as opposed to performing. You weren't performing, were you, in there?
No, yeah, I wasn't performing. No.
Okay,
Yeah.
just wanted to clarify that, just in case people thought, my God, he's a policeman and he's stripping in the evening. This is interesting stuff. How did you get away with it back in those days? Well, it was the 70s. It was okay. So what were you, you were a beat cop? I mean, you did traffic? Or,
I was a beat cop. I was a beat cop for about, and I really became disenchanted with police work. It wasn't really what I thought it would be.
Uh-huh.
And I got the opportunity then, and when I told them I was planning on leaving, that they said, well, how would you like to get into the motorcycles?
Okay.
So it was extremely hard on that particular police department to get into. It was a lifetime event, or for most of the cops who got into it, because it was wonderful. You got to go on all the beats. You got to go on any calls. You rode your motorcycle home.
Right.
You know, and we rode in twos. So my buddy Sandy Willett, we would ride together. We were Mary 3 and Mary 4, and it was a wonderful time, just riding a motorcycle every day.
So what you're saying, Rick, is that they based chips on you?
Yes.
Yeah, basically at the same time.
I grew up watching that. Did you actually do any work on it?
I did not. But my friend Bill Young, who takes care of all of the cars on all of these action shows, he was running all that.
God, the thing is over here, you couldn't take your motorcycle home with you. No. My brother was a police officer in London. He was a Met police officer. He was in the military as well before that, and he was one of the motorcycle outriders of the royal family in Germany when he was in the military police. And I could just imagine him bringing his bike home at night, and his wife going, "Oh, we're out of milk. Hang on, I'll get it." Blue lights to get them.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, it was one of the great benefits to bring your bike home.
You never get stuck in traffic, will you?
Exactly.
Go on, John. Next question.
Well, on the strength of that, I say we touched on the idea of again getting disenchanted with it and wanting to move on, and how long did you stay in the police force?
Well, I think I was a reserve for a year or two, and then I was on for about 5 years after that. I think it was like 5 or 6 years.
Right. And in that period of time, obviously this idea of maybe still thinking about stunt work or getting into the business in some shape or form was still there. I know that there's some connection between you and John Travolta ultimately getting in. Do you want to fill out the blanks for us on that one?
Well, right before I met John, Hal Needham came up to Santa Barbara and was doing a movie with Burt Reynolds called The End.
Yes.
And so I rode over there on my police bike to hustle him. And I didn't have pictures. I didn't have a resume. I didn't have anything. I just went over to meet him, and he was very gracious, and Hal loved the cops. He just loved them. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, I don't have anything for you here at, Barnett. I can't remember who was working that show. It was one simple little stunt that was up in Santa Barbara, and he thanked me for coming by. And then the next day I was actually working traffic for the movie.
Right.
And a PA came over with the radio and said, "Are you Rick Avery?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "Can you change into our costume and lead the funeral procession in the movie with your motorcycle?"
Right.
And I said, "Sure." So that was my first job. And lo and behold, it was really interesting. At the end of that job, Hal said, "Why don't you come down and see me in my office? I'm at Stunts Unlimited, and come visit." Wow. So I didn't realize the magnitude of it, but I did drive down one day, and I met with Hal. Andre Gibbs was the secretary, and Hal had his wood walled adorned office, and there was actually the new Hal Needham stunt toy.
Oh yes,
I think
that's
Hasbro
right.
or Mattel or someplace on his desk.
Yeah.
And he gave me a little speech and said, I really like you, and I understand that you did some training and yada, 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 yada. I mean, I was basically a brand new guy. And he said, part of this business is going out and motocrossing with the guys, playing golf with the guys. You got to go out and hang out with them. And, of course, I would have to work everybody on this wall before you had an opportunity to work. But, I can do that for you, and I can introduce you to everybody. And I didn't have any idea, guys, the magnitude of this number one legend guy offering this to me. The one thing he did say to me is, I can't stand for a fence walker, quote unquote.
Right.
You either got to sell your house, sell your business, quit your job up there and move down here, and then I'll do that for you.
Okay, so you do this or nothing at all, right?
Exactly. And I didn't even have a SAG card yet, guys. So I went back home. I spoke to my wife at the time, and I decided to not do it. And probably everybody in the stunt world who hears that story said, what a moron you were. But it was the best thing for me to do because I eventually met Hal's right-hand guy, Alan Gibbs, and he took me on the journey after that.
Alan was an extraordinary character. I mean, when you say he took you on the journey, what he took you under his wing. He sort of mentored you from the ground up.
It's funny. I was at the Legends dinner that the Stuntmen's Association puts on every year, and sitting at my table was Billy Burton, who is one of the greatest ever. One of the greatest ever. And we were talking about Cannonball 2, where I did a lot of work for Alan on that, and Billy had to get hit by a orangutan monkey and do a stair fall. And he said, thanks for remembering that, Rick.
Yeah.
And it was quite interesting because coming from him, he said Alan Gibbs was one of the best ever. In my mind, he was the best ever. He could do everything. He could create. He could rig. Before there were riggers, there was Alan Gibbs.
Yeah.
He could sit down on a corner with a director and come up with the most fantastic stunt ideas. Not only that, but he was a stuntman who did it all.
Yes.
He did high falls he did he did everything there was, and horse work. He was a all-around stuntman, and in my mind, the greatest ever, and a man's man.
Right.
I mean, we weren't far from each other in age, but I looked at him like a father figure, and really influenced my whole life. Gave me my first stunt coordinator job, so I could go on for hours about Alan Gibbs.
Well, I think that's you're not alone in that, because obviously in later life he did exactly the same thing with Jack Gill, and took Jack under his wing as well. So I think he was a figure who liked to give as much as he knew and pass it on, and pay it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way it happened was I was riding motorcycles, but one day it was raining, so I was in a police car, and it was early evening, Christmas time, and I get a call to meet a reporting party. They call them an RP. At such and such an address. Well, and to look for a white Jaguar. So I go to that address, and I don't see it. So the officer Fertilla said, call the station. Now, guys, we're talking about way back when there wasn't any cell phones. I had to go get it 10 cents out of my pocket and call the station to find out what
the good old days. Yep.
The good old days. So he said, Rick, you couldn't find it? And I said, no, I couldn't find the car. And so he said, well, this is John Travolta's car. He had a problem. Somebody jumped on the car and bent his windshield wipers. And this is the time when John had just finished Saturday Night Fever. He was the biggest star in the world. So I got in the car. And I drove around the corner. Mm-hmm. And it's funny how fate works, because if I had spent seconds more starting the car. If I had made a left turn instead of a right turn, if there wasn't a light that stopped me, I would have never met him. But I pull up to a red light. The rain was just stopping. I look off to my left, and lo and behold, there's the white Jag.
There it is, right.
So I motioned them to pull over, and John told me what happened, and he said, well, what do you recommend I should do in the future? And I said, well, maybe, it's Christmas time. You're the biggest star around. Maybe you should try, try having some security. There was a guy named Jerry Worms who later became a cop, who was his school friend.
Right.
And I said, isn't this your bodyguard or your security? And he said, no, this is an old school friend. So I said, well, maybe you should travel with some security. He said, can you recommend anybody? I said, sure. So I pulled out my card and gave it to him.
Me.
And yeah. So he said, why don't you send me your resume, because his ranch was just outside of Santa Barbara.
Right.
And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And he said, you're not going to do that? And I went, no, because you're giving me a line of bull. You're not going to even look at my resume. So we parted ways. He gave me the address to send it to. I went home to my brother-in-law, and I said, what's a resume? And he said, oh, I'll help you with that. So he made a resume. I hand-delivered, and I didn't hear from him again for a year. I figured he'd just... John Travolta's mom and his girlfriend both passed away. So
right.
he was with Scientology, and he was in he was kind of a recluse for that year.
Yeah.
But one morning I got a phone call from his attorney and said, I understand you're John's security. And I went,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What's it to you?
Come down here to LA and meet with me, and we'll sign some contracts, and you'll be in charge of his security from now on. So I drove down there. I got a speeding ticket from lousy CHP on the way back because I was late for my... I was late for call.
I bet you still haven't paid it.
I was late for my watch. It was funny. Of all things, I was driving the Bandit Trans Am model, so I was a target.
You were easy to spot.
But so I took care of John's security for a little while, keeping him out of trouble.
It's just, the thing is, if you got somebody who was brand new and wanted to join today, whether it's in America, whether it's over here, and they listen to your story, you could sit there and go, really? Is that how it used to happen? Because it did. There's so many different qualifications and all sorts of things these days. It's extraordinary.
Well, yeah. You listen to stories like Dickie Beer walks into the cafe at Elsie Studios, and they say, "What are you doing?" "Oh, nothing. Sorry, can you work on Return of the Jedi for the next 4 months, if you like?" And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, fine." It's amazing how it used to be, isn't it?
Yeah, it does, and I'm a firm believer that if you have a vision, if you visualize what you want as a goal in life, it'll eventually happen if you stick on it long enough.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on the industry today then, with the social media world and trying to push yourself? Push your profile in front of coordinators, and because over here we don't do a lot of hustling. That there's, I suppose there is around with the new genre coming in, but it doesn't really happen over here that much.
Well, I probably sound like an old fart, but anybody who worked in the 70s, 80s, into the very early 90s, that was the golden age of stunts for stunt men and women. We were a small community. We worked mostly out of Hollywood. If there were movies to be done anywhere else, they would fly us out of here. We were treated a whole lot better than stunt people are treated now. We would stay in the first class hotels, fly first class, 20 of us at a time. It was an amazing time, and it was an amazing time of invention. We were still trying to figure stunts out. The first pipe ramps, the first cannons were being done. What's an air ram? Oh my God, the original air rams would break your knees if you didn't ride them right. Yeah. It was a whole different adventurous time, and I was really fortunate to live in it. And I don't know, there's thousands of stunt people out there now. I don't know how to survive. It's tough. It's competitive. I don't know if I would be interested in going through that.
Do you think a registry would help, like we have over in the UK?
I don't think so.
No?
I mean, I think that works for what you have over there, and I actually admired it that you had to have qualifications. For us, it was just any Joe Blow that, if you could go out there and get the job and perform well to develop a reputation, then you could develop as a stuntman. And if you had the right mentor, in my case, I had Alan Gibbs to teach me how to do car work, how to do high falls, how to do a saddle fall off a horse. I mean, those types of guys come so rarely. How to do a fight. I mean, all these things. He was a great teacher, and it's really funny. I bumped into Hal Needham when we did Cannonball 2, and then on Cannonball 2, I hate to. It sounds like I'm bragging, but I did a lot of this stuff.
Brag away, Rick.
So many. No, I just did so many different things. So Hal Needham was the director, and I walked up to him one day and said, Hal, I just want you to know that you offered me the world. I didn't appreciate it at the time, but here I am with Alan, and I thanked him for that opportunity. So,
what did he say?
He said, "Get in the car and get going." I mean,
shut up, get over your job.
Alan, Hal was a screamer. Anybody who ever worked for him will tell you that. I mean, he was somebody to work for. But I mean, he worked my ass off on that job. He would be up in the helicopter. I'd be driving the Ferrari. There would be no traffic control at all. I mean, a cow could come out on the road, and he would be up in that helicopter screaming at me on the radio, "Go faster, go faster. God damn it, get your foot on the gas, stomp on it." And I wouldn't know what was coming around the corner.
Really?
But that's what it was like working for him.
Oh, yeah, we have a few screamers now, don't we? What do you remember what your first stunt was then?
Yeah, well, my first stunt was, one night I'm having dinner with John, and he wants to go out for a walk around the ranch. And the previous night I had seen Hal doing a transfer from Hal Needham doing a transfer from an airplane to a horse. On some show. I can't even remember what that show was.
The show.
Here comes the Oracle. He'll tell you.
The show.
What show was
the
that?
show was called You Asked for It.
You asked for it, exactly.
Yeah, and it was about.
And
I think it was 1956 or 57.
I think his housekeeper was sitting next to me, and I said, that's what I've been trying to do for the longest time. I would love to be able to do that. And she mentioned it to John. The very next night, John came over to me. He says, you look a lot like my father. I bet you could double me, Rick. How would you like to be my stunt man from now on? I don't like you being a cop. I think it's not safe. You know what? I'm going to have you on my next movie. And I went home and just hit the ceiling. I couldn't believe he told me about that. The next movie came. It was a movie called Blowout. And I didn't get a phone call. He had already left for Philadelphia, and I figured it was just another promise that wasn't going to come true. But a week before they started shooting, I get a call from the unit production manager, and he said, "Hey, I understand you're Rick Avery, you're John's stuntman." And I didn't know what to say, so I said, "Yeah." And I hadn't done any stunts before, guys, really in my life, except for a little training here and there. Driving in car chases with the police department, motorcycle chases. I didn't know my ass from my elbow. And I said, yeah. And then he said, well, we need you here in Philadelphia this weekend. We're going to do some car work. And you'll be here for three and a half months. So I said, okay, well, can I get back to you? Now, mind you, I've got my karate schools, a full-time policeman. I've got my family here. I asked my lady at the time, what do you think about this? She says, yeah, you should go for it. So I called my lieutenant, and I said, hey, can I get a leave of absence from the police department? He said, no, Rick, we don't give those. But what you can do paperwork-wise is you can quit. We're so excited for you that you'll be able to double the biggest star in the world at the time. And when you come back, we'll hire you back. It's just a paperwork thing. And it's great. We think it's great. So I quit the next day. I called the UPM, and I was on a plane with a whole bunch of guys from the Stuntmen's Association because Carrie Lofton was a stunt coordinator, and off we went to Philadelphia. And it's really a funny story. You got time?
Yeah. Go. What's the film?
It was called Blowout.
Oh, Blowout.
It was a Brian De Palma directed movie. It was all Italians on it. It was a Filmways movie, and it's funny because when we got to Philadelphia, Carrie wanted to have a meeting because the first day of shooting is a Jeep driving through 1,000 extras with stunt guys jumping out of the way, and the Jeep is driven by John Travolta. Right. So before we even had the meeting, they had us sign contracts. They handed me my per diem, which I thought was my pay because I wasn't making that much money as a cop.
Wow.
I think we were making $1,000 a week, something like that, $225 a day back then, or $180 a day.
Not too shabby.
So Carrie, who I'm sure your listeners know is probably the most legendary driver of all time for doing stunts, for stunt driving, he says, "Why don't you meet me at 3:00 and we'll go out and check out the Jeep and see what it can do." So I said, okay. So I didn't know what that meant, guys. So we got in the Jeep at 3:00. He says, "Drive down the road about a mile. There's a parking lot. We can go try that out." So I set my mirrors. I put on my seatbelt.
Right.
I made sure I used turn signals all the way. We went to the other parking lot.
He's the safest stuntman we have. Yeah.
I parked it nicely, and I looked over at him. I said, "Seems fine to me, Carrie." And he gave me the most incredulous look, like, "What in the hell do I have here?" For your listeners that are not stunt people, he wanted me to go out there and do some 90s, some 180s, feel out the car.
Throw it about.
Yeah, so the next morning I show up. It's the first day of shooting. We're in downtown Philadelphia. The Jeep has to jump some stairs and drive through City Hall and then through the parade.
Okay.
But when I go to makeup and hair, there's Chuck Waters, and he's dressed just like me. We're both wearing John Travolta wigs. We're both wearing the wardrobe. And Carrie comes over to me. He says, "Listen, kid, I wasn't really impressed with your driving yesterday, so I'm going to have Chuck do the sequence. But I'm going to give you the opportunity to do the first rehearsal. And if you do well in the rehearsal, I'll let you do the job."
Right.
So now I'm really forlorn. I've been caught with my pants down. So I get in the Jeep. There's 1,000 extras there. There's all these stuntmen. Everyone is in wardrobe. Here's Brian De Palma, huge director at the time. And my job is to drive this Jeep up these stairs in between railings that only have about 6 inches of clearance on either side. Right. So, I just went for it, guys. I stomped on the gas. I hit the stairs. I looked up through the windshield, and all I saw was sky. I almost looped that Jeep.
Yeah.
And it hit the second set of stairs. I slammed on the brakes. The brakes threw a 90 only because it was slippery like marble up there. The horse that was the stunt guy that was sitting on the horse reared. I mean, it's fantastic. And all I see in my side view mirror is this 63-year-old Carrie Lofton running at me, and his face is red as a bullfighter's cape. And he reaches in and grabs me through the window and shakes me.
Wow.
And says, "That was great, kid. Can you do it again?" And then he walked away. And I tried to figure out what the hell I did that made it work so well.
The first time round, yeah.
I was freaked out. I didn't know what I did. But he let me do the whole car chase, and it worked out really well.
And it made the trailer. We were just watching the trailer there for Blowout while you were talking, and that particular Jeep thing you were talking about, the Blue Wrangler, as it hits the step, and the nose comes right up, and you go, whoop, up he goes. And nearly, I can see your point. You're almost vertical as this thing goes up.
Yeah, well, the rehearsal was even more vertical than that. But yeah, I was fortunate, and then that led to the start of my stunt career. I mean, I didn't have another job for another year. I went back home to the police department, and they said, "Would you like to? We got you a brand new motorcycle, and it's in the crate. And when are you ready to start?" And I said, "Guys, I'm really sorry, but I'm a different man now.
I just found my calling."
I found my calling, and I didn't work for another year. My next job was was a chance for me to Tom Elliott and Richard Everett gave me a call and said, "Hey, you should come up to they're doing a movie up here in San Ynez. Come up and hustle this guy named Alan Gibbs." And I did, and they asked me to join as a charter member of the International Stunt Association, and that was the start of my professional career.
So 413 credits later, he's finally made the stunt pod.
I've been fooling all of these guys for all of these years.
Well, we call it over here top blagging. So top blagger, top Morse coder, top helicopter pilot, top
Exactly.
Oh mate, that's a story. What going from that? What was your last job that you did?
The last movie that I did?
Yeah, recently.
Well, I've been doubling Mr. Robert De Niro for the last, I don't know, I've done, I think, 11 movies with him, and we just finished a comedy called The Comeback Trail with Tommy Lee Jones and Morgan Freeman, and I'm really looking forward to it coming out. I did a bunch of horse work. I had to do some saddle falls off the back of a horse, riding double, and had to do some explosion and some ratchets and stuff like that. So it was pretty active, and that was the last movie I worked on.
Because one of my favourite movies he's ever done is Heat, and obviously you're in the beginning of that, and you had you were deafened by the blast at the beginning, weren't you?
Yeah, exactly. I think that was the first movie I ever worked with Bob on.
Yeah, and did you double him on that?
No. I just played my own part, but that's where I initially.
Oh, it's gone very quiet now. Is he there? We'll just have to keep chopping these things out, aren't we? Hiya, can you hear us?
Here we are.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
So
you just walk around the room.
Oh, is that what you do? I think if you stand on the chair in the corner and lift your left leg up and put your right arm in the air, that would be fine.
Okay.
Don't move. They're fine. Stop. Don't move. Don't move.
I wanted to say about Heat. I believe it was your son who had put a picture. It was a terrific photograph, a still image of you in Heat. That moment, you in Heat. What am I talking about? That's a terrible thing. You from the movie Heat. There, it's an extraordinary picture, and the idea that obviously your character is. You just got the blast and you can't hear anything, and you've got that rabbit in the headlights look on your face, and it's an incredibly powerful image. I must admit that's probably travelled with you very well. I would have thought, all around the world.
Well, I was really fortunate because Michael Mann, who's the director, was actually put the camera on his shoulder. He had a 1,000-foot mag. He went through 2 of those mags trying to get that look.
Really,
and he just kept telling me. It was wonderful personal direction from him because he kept telling me what he wanted. It was really funny because Pacino was just off to the side and kept saying, well, maybe he should move back and forth a little bit, sway back and forth. So I had this great actor giving me a couple of comments, and then Michael would just, come in close to get the shot with the camera on his shoulder.
Yeah. And
then he told me exactly how he wanted me to fall, which was not a stunt fall, just, give out on your knees and fall backwards.
Exactly, yeah.
Which was, so it was just great direction on his part.
Yeah, it's a sensational picture. I've always loved that. It's a marvelous still image to have with you the whole time. And of course, we touched on your work there for Cannonball and Cars. And of course, Cars have played a major part in your career, and one that we're skipping a bit of time, but we're going to come back, of course, to Blues Brothers. But there is a particular gag that you did fairly recently on an M&M video with doubling Dr. Dre, which was, well, I mean, I've seen it 100 times, but to actually watch the footage of you in the vehicle as well, pipe rolling a Ferrari. Is absolutely extraordinary. Just talk us through how you got the the call to go and do that, and how that became a reality.
Well, my friend Eddie Braun, who's done a ton of those himself,
Yeah.
gave me a call one day and he said, I need somebody that, quote unquote, he says, well, frankly, just go for it. Eddie has a pipe ramp that I've been off a number of times, and it's a hell of a pipe ramp.
Yeah.
It'll send you up in the air. And he said, I need somebody that's smaller, shorter than me, because this Ferrari that I want turned over, it doesn't have a lot of room in it. So I went over to look at the roll cage when they were putting in, and usually we have a little bit of space, and we'll make the roll cage so that the body's loose around it, so that the body will give a little bit,
Right.
Soften the impact. In this case, we couldn't do that. So I had to build the cage right out to the car because I only had a couple of inches of clearance between my helmet and the roll cage. So it was going to be a hard landing. And then when we got to the location, it wasn't the original location, which was straight line. We had to do it on an S curve, literally an S curve. So I had to hit the pipe ramp, clear the indentation of the S, and land on the other side.
Yeah,
so
there's a bend in the road, yeah.
Yeah, there was a bend in the road. So I knew I had to hit the pipe ramp really fast. So I think I hit it at 52. We were having problems with gear changing in this Ferrari. They had spent $66,000 on this Ferrari.
Of course.
And it was funny because my boys, Mike and Brian, were both there to tie me in. And when this white Rolls Royce pulls up and this big black muscular man gets out of it, and I don't know who it is, and the director says, "Oh, this is who you're doubling." I went, "Really?"
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And he shook my hand. He walked off. It was Dr. Dre. And I said to my younger son, "Who is that?" And he said, "That's Dr. Dre, Dad." And I said, "Oh, I thought I was doubling Eminem." So yeah, I did the crash. It was one of the best I did. I guess I've done a lot of pipe ramps, but that's the first one I've done with a really light car, and obviously it flies.
As you said yourself, you've done lots of pipe ramps, and people are very, very familiar with the way in which a pipe ramp works. They do straddle it, and it flips it one way, and then it goes through the air poetically and lands on its roof. This was the gnarliest looking thing I've ever. It's almost flipped backwards.
Yeah,
it's the most, and of course, what speed did you say you were doing when you hit the ramp?
I think I hit it around 52. That's the last when I looked down at the gauge, that's what I was doing. And then of course you gas it when you get to the ramp. But Eddie's pipe ramp it's got a kicker on the end, and it sends you at such an angle, and because of that lightness of the car, that's how it reacted. No, we can all, if you've done a lot of these, you can pretty much predict where the car's going to land. You don't know how it's going to land. It's all a crapshoot, and it was the same thing for this car. We didn't have any idea what the car was going to do in the air, and it just turned out to be spectacular. And
the landing itself, the camera position, I don't know how many cameras covered it, probably about 50, just to be on the safe side, because you just had no idea where this was going to go, but the landing was right into camera.
Yeah. I mean, well, we had Jack Gill there, and Jack's done a lot of these as well. I mean, I was fortunate enough to have Jack and Eddie there, two guys that we've worked a lot together. We worked on Blues Brothers 2 together, and we've done so many of these. And so I had two professionals there that were my eyes outside the car.
Yeah.
And Jack helped set a lot of the cameras for that.
We're just watching it now, open-mouthed at this, supercar bouncing and scoot. I mean, to watch it, of course, it's slightly slowed down, but to watch it, I mean, it gives the impression that it's just not going to land. It's not going to finish. It just keeps going and going and going. I guess it was quite a hefty ride for you inside the cab, was it?
Well, it's funny because the director said to me at the end, "Rick, I didn't run sound on this. I'm going to run sound on this later. I'm going to loop it in. What is it like?" And so I said, "Well, you hear yourself going through the gears, and then you hit the pipe, and right after you hit the pipe, it's just quiet. You don't hear anything. You might hear the engine revving. You'll hear the air, a lot of air that's going past there, and then all of a sudden, when you hit, all hell breaks loose. It's hard to explain, but it's a lot of rock. It's as if you were shoes in a washing machine or something like that.
Wow.
And he did really well. I mean, he put a really good soundtrack to that.
It's a spectacular gag. There's no two ways about it, and it always enhances. It definitely for me it enhances the video. Of course it does, but the idea that because he's driving the car, isn't he? Right the way through the video, he's driving the car, and then this accident happens towards the end. But quite an extraordinary moment, and captured there for posterity by you. So.
How was he?
How tall was Dre?
No, how tall was Rick?
Oh, before or after the gag? Yeah, before he was 5'7", and when he got out of the car, he was 4'6".
Yeah, that's exactly.
Because there's not much room in the behind the wheel of a Ferrari for Rick or anybody else for that matter. I mean, it's a very tight space, and the cage as well. I mean, it's really confined.
I know you. A quick question, Rick. I know you're good buddies with Andy Armstrong. Have you ever gone off his kicker ramp, or the stopper ramp that he's designed?
No. Never. I've actually never worked with Andy. We're just friends.
Because that looks brutal. Show me some video of people, Steph doing one on Bang Bang, and just looks brutal. But you can be so accurate with it. I think he put it down an alleyway, and they did a car turnover down an alleyway, and the whole thing just stops like it's hit a wall, and then moves into position where it should be in the alleyway. It's an amazing piece of kit.
Well, we'll tell you that doing a pipe ramp is easy because you just drive fast and you hit the pipe ramp and off you go. But I've found in my experience that when you look at where you have to hit the pipe with the car, it's a matter of inches. And if you're off an inch to the left, an inch to the right, it changes the whole action of what that car is going to do. And it's a moment in time. So you have to be at a particular speed, hit at a particular angle, those few inches inside the tire of the car to make it do what you want to do. So it's not as simple, really, as it looks. And I was one of those people in the beginning that said, just put me in there. Alan gave me my first car rollover in Armed and Dangerous, which was a hell of a car rollover, and I only hit it at, I think, 38 miles an hour. It's probably the biggest wreck. So we hit it at that speed, and the car just literally comes apart. But I found out later that was the ingenuity of Alan. The hood and a lot of the parts on the car, and he loosened all the bolts on them.
Yeah. So the impact was sort of like separate everything away.
Yeah. It's one of my best turnovers. It was my first one too.
I love what Andy and Jack did on Venom, where they did the pipe ramps. They put the pipe ramps inside the cars, so it looks like they actually minced the cars and totaled the cars. But the pipe ramp was sending them as a double sidewinder.
Yeah, sidewinders. I've never done one of those. Those look hellacious.
Yeah. There's is it Roy Alon and Vic Armstrong? Roy Alon over here did a pipe ramp and got out and said, "How'd you think? What was it like?" And Vic said, "Great, but you went off the wrong side."
Yeah.
Do it again.
Yeah, people have done that. You know, they've ended up going off the wrong side or off the freeway and into other. Yeah.
Is that
it can be a big mistake.
Is that moment of like you're rolling up to it and you're like 20 seconds away, you go, did he say left or right? Anyway, go on, you got another question, John?
Well, it's just really with reference to moving on now to Blues Brothers 2000, which made in 1998 and was the sequel to the Blues Brothers, which was originally in 1980. Now, for those people who are familiar with the Blues Brothers, partway through, towards the back end of the movie, there is a car crash. The boys are being chased by the police, and there's a car crash. And it was about 20, 30, 50 cars, maybe at a push or something like that. And it was a huge pile-up, terrific stuff. Then the second one comes around, and it's to be bigger and better. Now, firstly, obviously, same director, John Landis. How were you approached for this? Did this come directly from the top, or how did you get involved in the picture?
Well, I had been doing movies with John for a while, and so I kind of became his guy.
Okay.
That's how I got the job, and it was in Canada, and of course, it's hard for Americans to work in Canada. I was able to bring up Buck McDancer, my ex-wife Joni. Who else did I bring? I brought Eddie Braun, Jack Gill, and Bob Miner.
Hubie Kearns.
And the rest were all Canadians.
Right.
So what happened was once we got there and we started talking about how we were going to do this movie, one day in pre-production, John walks into my office and says, "Hey, Rick, I just realized that people are going to come see this movie and they're going to want to see a lot of wrecks like we did in the original." I said, "Okay, what do you want to do?" He says, "Well, why don't you set up something for hitting something on the highway and 5 cars pile up?" I went, "Okay." So I worked out a little thing, and then he came back a couple of days later. We're still in pre-production. He said, "Make that 10 cars." Every day it became kind of a funny thing because we eventually got to, one day he came and said, "You know what, I want it to be 25 cars." At the end of the day, it turned out to be 54.
Right.
It starts to be a dream because you're going, "Oh my God, we're all going to get to do all these pipe ramps and jumps and crashes." And then you realize you run out of ideas. How am I going to do 54 cars? Because by the time you get to the 10, 15 car portion of it, you've run literally out of ideas. And I'm asking my friends, "Guys, what should we do? Should we weld 2 cars together? Should we drive backwards? What should we do?" Well, I decided to just start out with little ramp jumps, build a little pile, then do bigger jumps. And then I set 3 pipe ramps in the highway, and we would have 5 cars go all at once.
There's a couple. Sorry to stop you there, but I just want to clarify a couple of little bits and pieces. So we've got some smaller mini ramps first. That's cars going on top of a pile and turning over, and then one goes into another vehicle and turns over. But then the first big pipe roll is through the side of the truck. Do you remember who was responsible for that?
For the first pipe ramp?
Yeah.
I think that was Bob Miner.
Bob Miner, right? So that's the first big airborne one that goes, and it just continues to get gnarlier and gnarlier as it goes on.
Well, here's the thing. When I got there, we had all these cars, and production was. I've never ran into a production like this. They said, "Whatever you need, you get." So I got to test drive every car, me and Jack and Eddie. Eddie was even taught my little son how to through 90s. We went out and checked out every single police car there was.
Right.
And with a little bar of soap, we'd write on the window what that car needed. So every car was almost like it was brand new. Then I put a roll cage in every single car. I bought 5-point harnesses for all of the cars. And then I had Kevlar helmets for the drivers because they were so light. And then each driver, I just told them, "Listen, guys, you do turnovers till you get tired of doing them." And the guys were doing turnovers till they were saying tweet, tweet, tweet. I
was going to say, you used how many is acceptable on a picture. Let's look outside of this for a moment. So you let's say you get asked to go and do a pipe ramp job on a movie. You get 1, maybe 2. Is it acceptable for that? But you got way beyond that in this because you had to.
Well, Eddie Braun and Hubie Kearns, they started acting really stupid after the 3rd one, so I had to say no more for you because we agreed. Hey guys, whatever happens, just pour me into the car. Just lay me into the car because they were going to make a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly.
but physically they couldn't do it. As a matter of fact, I ran out of drivers, and I had to get in the car and do the last two, which was 5 of us going at the same time. And
yeah, exactly.
Jack had a radar gun, and I think he clocked me at 60 when I hit those pipes.
So
the thing is people watch that wreck nowadays, and they don't believe we were driving cars.
no, that's the thing. Because everything is so dramatically CGI'd these days. Let's look at the very start of that sequence, which is the Blues Brothers car making that jump. Now that's a huge jump. Is that a ramp to ramp jump?
No, it was a ramp to ground. Eddie Braun did the first one, and his tire went slightly off the ramp.
Right.
So the car wasn't perfect in its angle coming off. So John wanted to do it again. So I had Jamie Jones, a Canadian stunt guy. He did the second one.
Wow.
It was a 200-foot ramp to ground jump.
Huge. Absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Comes in nose heavy.
Comes in nose heavy, like he's going to land right on top of that front grille. So Jamie Jones does that.
Yeah, I think we had 8 Bluesmobiles for that car. Some that ran on nitrous, some were set up for small jumps. We had cars that were set up for all different kinds of things. You know, it's quite interesting. Jack wasn't feeling well, and he didn't do any of the car rollovers, but he did all the accurate work with the Bluesmobile.
Okay.
And John came up to us one day and he said in a production meeting, "Rick, I want the Bluesmobile to come up and throw a 180 and go right to the curb." And I said, "Okay." He said, "What do you mean, okay?" And I said, "All right. What are you going to do to make that happen?" "I'm going to hire the right driver."
Yes, of course.
And he was perplexed because he said, I had Eddie Dono in the car doing that first one, and they had a bunch of things in the car with lights on it and stuff. I said, "John, I don't know if they were pulling your leg, but I'm just going to get a good driver." So I had Jack do it, and the first night, it was a wet down, and Jack has to come in hot, and they had 2 cars parked there. The CGI guy said, "I could put 2 cars in post." Landis didn't like doing things like that. He wanted the real stunt. So he said, "Put 2 cars there and have Jack come in here and throw a 180 and park it right on the curb." Jack was nervous as heck. He thought he'd be on a plane. So when I said to Landis, "How far apart do you want these cars?" He says, "When the Bluesmobile comes in, I want it no further than 3 feet to each bumper."
Wow.
So when I was setting the cars up, I told the transpo guys, "Make it 5 feet. John's not going to do the difference." The problem was John was right behind me when I said that. And he made them get a tape measure out and measure 3 feet.
Wow, really?
So Jack Gill comes in, throws the 180, perfect, cut. John wasn't happy with that. He said, "Measure it to 2 feet." Jack comes in and does it again, perfect. Measure it to 1 feet.
Oh, he's testing
We were doing this with a tape measure.
Wow.
And Jack came in and did it again. Perfect. I don't know any other driver in the world that could have done it that night so perfectly, but he did.
He knows.
And so John edited it a couple of times more in the movie.
He knows precision. Well, absolutely. I mean, the whole thing. We're looking at the chase now as it's. We're looking at the crashes. The trajectory is incredible. How did you get some of that distance? It's unbelievable.
It was all, first of all, they're all pipe ramps based on Eddie Braun's dimensions.
Okay.
So that's the pipe ramp I've found that gives you the best magic after you hit it. So we had a bunch of those built, welded, and placed. So like I said, we had 3 of them placed so you could have 5 cars go off at one time. And then it was just a matter of hitting the throttle, guys. It's, I don't hit it at 30 or 40. It's 50 or 60.
Yeah.
And that's how we were able to get that. I mean, I've never seen that before. When I got in the car, I had the cars in front of me doing it. And for me to be driving that fast and watching cars in front of you flip, it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life.
Absolutely must have been. To see 3 cars going in front of you and then I'm airborne as well.
Yeah. No, it was quite amazing. And I forget, because you had mentioned to me earlier, the French guy.
Yeah.
What was his name?
French stuntman called Anton Ducone, who I believe was...
Ducone. So we did the first day, we did all this in a day and a half. We had 10 cameras fixed.
Okay.
No cameras moved, no modern technology cameras, no edge arms, no ultimate arms, no Russian arms, nothing like that.
Right.
And the first crash, I just wanted them to crash in and do a little semi-pileup.
Yep.
So the first 10 stunt guys did it. John Landis comes over to me and he said, "That sucked. Now you tell these guys to step on the gas and do it right." So I said, I had somebody say, I went to the crowd of stunt guys. I said, "Guys, I need the first car to come in here really hot.
Right.
Who wants to do it?" And this little hand, not one of my drivers, one of this little hand just comes up, and he says, "I'll do it, sir." Well, it was this French guy, Antoine.
Right.
So he gets in the car, and if you watch the first crash, he hits that thing so hard that the rear end comes up, and John Stoneham Jr. comes up underneath
Under
him.
him. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Under him. I've
It's
never seen anything like it.
Not
That's
at all.
how hard he hit that thing. Now, the problem was, after that first wreck, I go out there to check and make sure all the drivers are okay,
Uh-huh.
and Anton's in an ambulance.
Oh, wow.
And they're looking him over, and I said, "Hey, are you okay?" Because I guess the console came in and just barely touched his chest. He was fine. But when I'm looking at him with his shirt off, he's got a device on his chest, and I said, "What's that, Anton?" And he said, "That's a pacemaker."
Oh, Christ.
I went, "You're wearing a pacemaker?" Why?
Wow.
I said, why didn't you tell me that? And he said, "Would you have let me do it if I told you?" And I went, "No."
Well, no.
No. So that guy was the hero of the whole thing. I mean, you look at this whole setup, all these flying cars, I'm telling you. And I tell you what, I know we were pulling 8Gs plus in the turnover because when I went home, both my eyes were red like a vampire.
Really?
So I went
Just
to see
from
a
the G-force?
doctor here in the U.S. Well, it's funny. I got to customs coming back in the U.S. and I was wearing my sunglasses.
Uh-huh.
And the guy said, "Well, what were you doing in Canada?" And I said, "Well, I'm a stunt man. We were doing some stunts here." And he said, "You don't look like a stunt man." And I raised my sunglasses and he looked at me and said, "Okay, move on."
Oh, yeah, you do.
So I went to see an eye doctor. I was worried about my eyes. They were completely red. And he said, "Well, to cause that, you would have to pull instantaneous 8Gs. So I guess that's what we were all doing.
8Gs during that.
8Gs. But not gradual like you would in a fighter jet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing that's very interesting in these is that there are moments where there are cars. So Bob Miner pulls that first big one right through the trailer and out the other side, and then there's another vehicle that comes right over the top of the trailer and lands on top of him.
That was my ex-wife Joni.
Oh wow! How long did you stay with this woman? I mean, she seems really dangerous.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she was a hell of a stunt gal, and Bob was knocked unconscious. He did the smallest of all the turnovers, and it knocked him out.
Wow!
So we had to send him off to the hospital, and then I told Joni to center punch the pipe ramp, so she actually hit it dead center, so it's more like a jump.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Buck McDancer came in after that.
Yeah, because I'm just looking at we're just looking at the first pipe ramp left hand twist through the cabin with all the blue pipes going everywhere, and then one comes over on its belly, and then another one comes in and must be about 20-30 feet in the air flat. So that's they're all off the same pipe ramp.
Yeah, also off the same pipe
ramp. And the last one is basically flat, just flat it and it will kick you in the air.
Yeah, that's your
ex-wife, Joni.
Was the second one. Yeah, and Buck McDancer, I think, was the second one.
That is, and they filmed it from a couple of angles, the same take, couple of angles, but it's graceful. It's graceful, isn't it?
It's there isn't a if you type car crashes right into YouTube, and there are endless supplies of people who've put clips of this and clips of that together. This sequence is in all of them. Because it is absolutely I think it's superb, the very, very best. Look at this. So you get these extraordinary like cartwheel end over end over end in some of these vehicles, so violent, and this is with the hitting of the vehicles.
The final ones that we did, the pile was already established. So any guy who's done a lot of these will tell you that landing in that pile is actually easier than the first ones were, simply because it's softer.
Cushioning, okay.
Yeah. So we had a lot more G-forces, a lot more speed going to get that action of cartwheels, but the impact wasn't, as bad. You couldn't. There's no production company that would ever do this again.
No,
I mean,
of
there's
course
too much CGI that could make this available to you. And it's funny, I got called on the carpet a week after we got back to Hollywood. John Landis and Leslie Bellsberg, the producer, called me on the carpet, and they said, "You're way over budget. Do you know how much this all costs?" And I went, "Exactly what I had in the budget." I said, "My budget didn't come into effect till the last few weeks of the show, really."
Exactly.
And they said, "No, you look at this budget." And I went, "Wait a second, this budget was $2.5 million, which is not a lot of money nowadays." But but I guess that's what this total sequence cost, considering cameras, cars, everything. Wow. It was about $2.5 million. So I got out of it because I said, "Hey, none of this was me. That was all your production stuff."
Yeah. 2.5.
They're still pretty expensive in stunt adjustments and stunt people.
Absolutely, and deservedly so. I mean, there's no two ways about it. They earned every single penny of their fee that day.
I bought a Mercedes off of that weekend.
Well, as long as you didn't drive it the way you drove everything else. Oh my goodness! I mean, it's still. I've seen it hundreds of times. I've just watched it again. There, my heart is racing. Absolutely spectacular stuff. And there's going to be other peculiar people like me on the planet who do the same thing. They watch it and they still get the same thrill and excitement from it, like the first time we saw it in the cinema. And that's the action sequence,
I thought I would get every job for Cars after that. But no one saw that movie. That movie was
the problem, wasn't it?
It was a complete failure.
Yeah.
At the box office, so nobody saw it, and so I didn't get any work off of that. You would think that I would have.
Yeah, you'd think. Well, that's Cars done then. So we need to learn how to do something else, because Rick's going to get all of this. On the success of that, you'd expect the Earth, but that's the business for you. You just never know, do you? Okay, we're going to move on, and Blake's going to take you through the next stage.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask Rick, when that process of when you went from performing to coordinating, but looking at your credits, you're still performing. So do you prefer coordinating or performing?
Oh, at this stage in my career, well, I tell you what, I really enjoyed performing for Bob on these recent movies that I've been doing.
Yeah.
Of course, I prefer coordinating. Listen, years ago, and I think any veteran stuntman will tell you this, when someone would come up and say, "You're crazy for what you're doing. You set yourself on fire, you throw yourself downstairs," and a professional stuntman will react by saying, "No, we plan everything out. It's safe. We use professional athletes." But nowadays, I totally disagree. When someone comes up to me and says, "You must be crazy for doing that," I say, "You're absolutely right." Doing what we do is not normal. Yeah. Throwing yourself down a perfectly good flight of stairs, throwing yourself off the top of a building, it takes a special type of crazy person. So do I enjoy doing stunts? Well, I'm not as crazy anymore. Would I still do? I just got a call that they got a movie coming up and there's a lot of pipe ramps in it. Do I want to do it? Yeah, I'll be there. But the creative aspect of being a coordinator and then using your knowledge to help younger stunt people, I prefer that more.
I mean, what would be your biggest piece of advice then to somebody who wants to start a career?
Go out and get some skills. There's still places here in Hollywood. I don't recommend going to stunt schools. They're not going to really do anything for you. Find a mentor. Alan started me out with Cars. He took me out and taught me how to do 180s, but he didn't give me any stunt jobs doing it. My first job was not to hit Robert Redford, who was doing a walk across the street. Just make sure you stop short and you don't hit him. That was my stunt. Simple. It took me 2 or 3 years before he gave me my first car rollover. It took me a year before I was able to throw a 90 into an intersection. So you need a mentor who's going to take you, show you the ropes, don't put you in a bad position, and of course you have to walk in the door with some type of skill. You don't have to know stunts. You have to be able to learn them. It's an on-the-job training.
Yeah.
At least that's how I came up.
Yeah, it's very similar here. Is that we go through to? I mean, you don't have to be on the register over here anymore, but the register is the best place to be if you want a career. And the physical skills that you learn and to qualify, but there's no set skills to doing stunts. That's when you learn. Once you get accepted onto the register, then you learn how to be a stunt performer. And there is a couple of schools out there that do it, but they do it as more of a kind of, I don't know, help me out here. It's more of a kind of a experience thing than a career thing, because there's that kind of hinge, or there's that kind of fuzzy line between extras and stunts now, because you can't really define a stunt anymore, can you?
Well, yeah, and it's funny. Alan Gibbs used to say, "Rick, it's all kid shit. I can teach anybody to be a stunt man or a stunt woman." Yeah. He said, "All you need to know is a front flip, a back flip, and a brandy, and that's all."
Yeah. Sorry, how to drink brandy was that?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Was that the Terry Leonard School of with a nurse on one arm and a Mickey of whiskey on the other?
Yeah, exactly.
But the definition of stunt has always intrigued me. How different people see define what their definition of a stunt is, or how would they define a stunt? Because nowadays you get the actors, lots of actors. Oh, I do all my own stunts. It's like, well, okay, what's a stunt then?
Yeah, well, there are some actors that I guess you could say that they do certain stunts, but production's not going to allow them insurance-wise to do anything that's going to jeopardize the production. A lot of the stunts that you see them doing is big Ritter fans blowing their hair back, and they're on a green screen, and it looks all great. My favorite is Harrison Ford. He was on David Letterman, and they asked him when he did Indiana Jones, "So we understand you do all your own stunts." And Harrison Ford said, "I have a stunt double that does my stunts for me. I'm a physical actor." Yes. Yeah. And I highly respected his answer, because there are actors out there that can do physical work just as good as any stunt man. But when it gets to the stuff that's going to possibly break an ankle or a knee, no. Yeah. I did have Sean Penn. He was producing a movie I worked on. I was his stunt man. And he had to jump off of a bar through a big glass window and land on the sidewalk. And we kept saying, "Sean, it's so easy for you to turn an ankle or fall." And he insisted, and he was the producer. So he ended up doing the stunt, and he did it as good or probably better than I could have. So there are guys out there that can do that stuff. It's just limiting.
I was going to say, because I've been in Harrison Ford's stunt double's house, and there's a lovely picture on his wall that says, with an inscription from Harrison Ford, says, "When you learn to talk, I'm in trouble."
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. We always have a joke on the set. When our actor comes on, okay, he'll do my dialogue for me.
Yeah. Well, I've got a joke at the moment with Daniel Craig. He's got to put weight on if I'm going to double him.
Yeah.
What do you? Let's talk about helicopters, because you went into a career of helicopters as well, didn't you?
Oh, I took a gamble, guys. Listen, I got in the business as a stuntman in 1980. I also became a private pilot in 1980. And then as I started, I got a little bit of money one day, and I decided I was going to add on and get my helicopter license. And that went on, and the people who taught me decided that I could be a good teacher. So I became an instructor and started teaching instructors to be helicopter instructors. And the natural progression was to get into turbine helicopters. I took a really big gamble for a couple of years, and I flew for the news. I flew forest fires, and got a lot of experience. I think I've got like almost 8,500 hours flying now, and I'm currently the chief pilot at National Helicopters and Elite Helicopters, the oldest helicopter company in the United States. And I fly movie production. I do camera work. I do stunt work flying helicopters. When you asked me at the beginning of the show, how's it going? And I said, I'm the most fortunate man in the world. There's no other man in the world that has a resume for helicopters and a resume for stunts. Yeah. And to be able to do them both, if I'm not doing stunts on a day, I'm flying. And I am the most blessed person to be playing at what they call a profession.
It could really go off some people, you know that. Because I mean, the coolest things in the world for me, in my personal opinion, the coolest things in the world are motorcycles and helicopters.
Well, you know, I remember the first time I saw a helicopter on a set, and I was standing there as a stuntman, because you know the stuntmen and stuntwomen, they're the coolest people on the set. But when a helicopter comes in and blows dirt down on you, all of a sudden that guy is the coolest guy on the set. So I wanted to be that guy. Yeah, it's a lot of fun for sure.
You just wanted the jumpsuit to get out and do the Top Gun walk, didn't you? Get out and sort of do that swagger.
Yeah.
We'll talk about fun. I mean, what's the most fun you've had on a film set? Practical jokes allowed, and no names, no pad drill.
You know, there's a director, Chris Nolan, who I respect as one of the greatest directors. He never leaves the set. He's an amazing man. And I got a call to work with a very eclectic group on the first Batman series that he did. I had already done a Batman movie, Batman Returns, before that.
Yeah.
But Tom Struthers gave me a call. We were going to do a lot of car work with people I didn't know. I knew Jim Wilkie, but the rest of the people, it was very eclectic how he chose his drivers for that job. And we made friendships that have lasted a lifetime off that movie. It was fun. It was warm summer nights in Chicago. You know, we got a Taurus Award for it. And then we went on to do the 2 more Batman movies with Chris. I then coordinated The Prestige for him. We did Dunkirk. Those are the fondest memories, I think, that I have. That and Cannonball 2.
Sure. So you know George Cottle very well then?
I do.
Yeah,
George is fantastic.
Yeah, George and I got on the stunt register exactly the same day, 1st November '97, and 2 careers could not be any different.
Yeah, I think
the bastard.
He's actually, he did a fantastic job driving that Batmobile, because he let us get in it. I think on the last movie to drive it around the parking lot. You can't see anything out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, George did an amazing job, and I think he's actually coordinating for Chris now.
His second unit now on a film that's Greg Smers is in Italy doing the car stuff for that as well, but he's all over the place now.
Yeah.
But let's talk about your book as well.
My book is called A Life. Well, it's funny. People would always ask me, "What have you doing in life?" And I've done so many different careers, and you should write a book. So I started to write a book about 20 years ago, and I got 50 pages in and never got anywhere else because I'm not a writer. But I met a Temple black belt friend of mine who's written a number of books, and he said, "Listen, I'll help you write the book." His name's Tom Bleecker, and so for 6 months off and on, he would come to my house, or I'd go down to his, and we'd do interviews, and we wrote this book together, and you can get it on Amazon, or you could go to rickaverybook.net and get it signed if you like. rickaverybook.net. And we finally got a book together, and it takes it kind of like an autobiography with a bunch of stunt stories, cop stories, karate stories, a whole bunch of stuff like that. It's more about never quitting. And it's out there. I'm very proud of it, and thanks to Tom Bleecker for helping.
So have you signed the options for the movie yet then?
Who's
going to play Rick Avery?
Of course, it'll be Brad Pitt, wouldn't it?
Yeah. You can do everything. But with your extensive, it is one of the things, because I mean, life on set sometimes is very mundane, and with your extensive experience, what are the things, tongue in cheek? These don't have to be serious. What are the things that you shouldn't do, or who you shouldn't talk to, and what you shouldn't say to those people? For example, Andy Armstrong's best one to the DOP is nobody's going to see that.
Nobody's going to see that. You know what? Are you asking about on-set behavior?
Yeah.
Listen, I'm the last person to ask. It's more about, be seen, be not heard. But here's a really quick story, really quick. There's, in the original Blues Brothers, a great stuntman named Eddie Dono does a stair fall. He's wearing a school table. He's sitting in a school table and does this hellacious stair fall. And at the bottom of the stairs, John Landis comes over to him and looks down and says to Eddie, that was fantastic, Eddie. Can you do another one? And Eddie then says, go fuck yourself.
That's a no then.
only if you do Eddie Dono, one of the greatest stunt guys around, only he could get away with saying that, and he did not have to do another take.
Oh dear. Sorry, who are you? What did you say?
That is, I've just thought about that in my head. It is, you've seen people do stair falls, but never inside furniture. And
yeah, exactly.
He does. He comes down like a ton of bricks inside a school desk. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, most stunt people will always say, yeah, I'll do another one. But, you know, the reality of it is, here's a guy that had the balls enough to say, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, go, absolutely. You get one and that's it, right? That's it.
That's it. I'm not doing it this
How many times would you have liked to have said that?
How many times what?
How many times would you have liked to have said that?
Oh, God, so many. So many times.
There's still time, Rick. You know, you're
Well,
only 400 projects
in.
in.
Bob?
I think I'm old enough. I think I'm old enough and grumpy enough to get away with saying it once in a while, maybe.
I see that. Yes, I see that. Although there are people who would quite easily have said, "Yeah, I'll do another one," and then you know, a couple of broken limbs later, they'd still be saying, "Do you want it again?" You know, you keep going and
Yeah.
keep. Yeah. What do you?
That's happened to all of us. It's the one extra that you do that you always get hurt on.
I was going to ask you about recognition. What do you think about recognition? Brad Pitt brought this up the other night at the Oscar ceremony. I know it's been talked about a lot, and he said, you know, effectively what he said was that, you know, we should really look at how about a category for these guys. What are your feelings on it?
Well, you know, here we go getting a little political, but I'll say this. You know, back in the old days, it was frowned upon for stunt people to get recognition, and stunt people didn't want the recognition. It was our job to do the job and make the actor look good, and we were supposed to be invisible. Mm-hmm. But over time, there were a lot of background stories done on stunt people, showing the public for what we actually do, and now it's common knowledge. And I love the idea that we have the Taurus Awards, we have the Emmy Awards. We're getting recognition, but it's still not the recognition, and I'll tell you why.
Right.
You know, I'm a member of DGA. I've directed a couple of movies, a whole bunch of second units. Mm-hmm. Yet, when you get a DGA magazine, I'm going to get hell for this. When you get a DGA magazine, they'll list the credits of the DGA members that worked on each movie. And they'll have the UPM, of course, he's DGA. They'll have the director. They'll have the assistant director, but never the second unit director. The second unit director never gets recognition. He'll get credit maybe on the movie and at the end of the movie, but we never get recognition. We don't listen to this. The assistant director will get residuals. The second unit director never gets residuals, and he was the director for the day. Why is that? Why is it that we don't get the Oscar? Because we're just a bunch of dumb cowboys being thrown down the stairs, and they don't want to recognize the fact that we are equal to them.
Wow, really?
That's it. Simple.
That's still the idea, you think?
You bet. It's the old school guys at the Academy, and I'm a member of the Academy, so don't get me in trouble.
No.
But it's the old school guys. Do it. It's the old school guys that still see us that way. Now, Nowadays, it's not a bunch of old dumb cowboys falling off horses, and I don't mean that they're dumb. I'm just saying that's how they're seen. Mm-hmm. Today, stuntmen are directing movies. John Wick directors they're directing commercials. They're all educated people. We have educated stunt people. They've all been to college. They're all professional athletes. They're all very creative, and it's a whole different atmosphere. But until the old school people leave these places of power, we're not going to get any further recognition. Yeah. That's just my personal feeling.
Mm. Do you think that's changed now with the new age of stunt performer? Do you think, where they like with the social media and the look at me aspect kind of things?
Yeah, I think that. I think there needs to be a little bit more humbleness. I find myself, even me, being forced to put stuff up there to stay in competition. It's part of the business to show what you've been working on and show your latest stuff. Mm. But I don't know how you can get. Nowadays, it's hard to be spectacular. Everything's been done already, right? And
I was going to say, yeah, it's a case of trying to stand out from the crowd because it's a big crowd now, and you've got to stand out from it, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, before to do just a cannon roll was a big deal, and some people wouldn't feel like they were a stunt person unless they did a pipe ramp or a cannon roll.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it really doesn't matter. There's so much over the top movie action. It becomes boring, I think. I mean, the Fast and the Furious movies, you got cars flying through the air, coming off one building. I mean, it's so ridiculous. I mean, it makes a fortune, and it's great for our stunt community. I mean, the guys and gals are making a fortune doing it. So God bless them. But the day of doing practical stunts, doing a French Connection, doing a bullet, doing those old school car chases that really get your heart beating, it becomes boring.
It's exactly my thoughts as well, because it has got to the point now where stunts don't particularly look like a stunt anymore. It's not a stunt on being on a wire, being pulled out of frame, that then you get CGI'd to go flying through the air. Is that a stunt?
Well, it's actually worked out good for the longevity of stunts. I mean, yeah, I'm still doing saddle falls, for crying out loud, and still doing ratchets and stuff.
Yeah. But
we don't have to do those high falls into the airbags that were dangerous anymore. We don't have to do air ramps with explosions behind us anymore. A lot of it's CGI. So yeah, the guys will do the air rams, but they're not exposed to flame and fire. There's still stunts that do that, but for the most part, it's safer for us, for our community.
Because we've been speaking to lots of coordinators, and there is an element now where they come on set and you've got the stunt team on one side of the room and the fight team on the other side of the room. And do you think with like the likes of YouTube and things like that, where people have seen stunt work as fight work, where it's not a stunt, it's a fight?
Well, I'm going to sound like an old grumpy stunt guy, but I remember being on a show where I was driving the camera car, second unit directing, hopped out of the car and did a car rollover, and then had to go home and make the phone calls and break down the script and do it all by myself. Today, I think it's wonderful. The stunt coordinator has an assistant, or there's a second stunt coordinator to do all the phone calls, to do all the hiring, to do all the rehearsals. Some of these movies are so big that you have to have a fight coordinator. You have to have specialists that come in and do the rigging for the wire work. Now we have rigging crews where we never had that before. So for me, I think it's wonderful that we have all of these different departments that make up the one department of stunts. It shows that production is willing to spend the money to get the job done. And it gets a lot of jobs for the guys.
Yeah, true. I see that. I mean, as you said yourself, there was, back in the heyday of that period, there was the stunt coordinator did everything. He was the stunt arranger because he arranged everything. The fights. Maybe it was just the fact that they weren't given titles. If Alan Gibbs was working on a picture, and he said he'd say to somebody, right, do me a favor, you organize the fight over here and we'll do this over there, and between them they organized it. Nowadays that's a separate credit as a fight coordinator, and that's a separate credit as something else.
Yeah, exactly true. And we have so many women coordinators now, and I have the utmost respect for female stunt people, because they do everything a guy does without pads. They are so much tougher than we are. Yeah. So guys, get your act together with that.
Maybe they're just waiting for lots more drag movies to happen so that these guys can fall downstairs and see what it seems like with just little pads on.
But exactly. But going on to that, what's your thoughts about this wigging thing? This where you have people men doubling women.
I'm totally against it. I had to do it once. I was forced into it. I was in Canada. There was no one available. They made all the phone calls. The gal that I hired couldn't get the job done, so I was forced to do it, and I didn't like it at all. Yeah. And I had to do it on a commercial at the last minute, too, because unfortunately the lady that was hired couldn't do it. I'm totally against it. The women out there are fantastic. They can do what we can do, sometimes even better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, in this day and age, it shouldn't be done.
It shouldn't be done. But then when it comes to the things where the skill set is a certain skill set is required, and that skill set isn't available from the gender that's been asking, isn't there an issue where you go, well, okay, we need the best person for the job to do the safest job possible?
Yeah, well, then I have to always lean to production to make that decision.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a production problem. We can't get our shot unless we do this. Are you willing to do this? And then you need to exhaust everything. In my opinion, you need to make all the phone calls, call the union if you have to, whatever it has to be done. Usually when it's done, I find now it's at the last minute. For some reason, somebody got hurt.
Right.
And that's it. But,
See,
in my opinion...
Go ahead. We tend to find it in certain situations. It's also there's a lot of people saying, "Well, no, we need to, there needs to be, as has been brought up with the academy and all sorts. There needs to be more diversity. There needs to be this. There needs to be that." Having said that, if there aren't, this department is different in that respect. And if there aren't, for instance, enough women on this particular available because the numbers may be smaller, so they're scattered, they're doing television, they're doing other bits of film, and this particular production requires a larger amount of women that you just don't have that meet that skill set. How do you work that out?
Well, the women don't get the opportunity because the scripts aren't written for action for women. So
Right.
You're not going to have a lot of women getting a chance to do car rollovers and car work because they're not put in that position in the script.
Just the
so
stunt.
I think it just comes from the beginning. I think it's up to the writer and the producer and director to give those opportunities for women heroines in movies to do more action. So we see that in a physical sense in fighting and battle scenes and things like that. For car work, we see less of it, and that's just going to be up to a more diverse writing aspect of our scripts.
Now, I wanted to talk to you, Rick, because you were involved in a project. Obviously, you've had a great experience through your life and your love of boxing, and the fighting that you've done, and of course, working on a picture like Hands of Stone, which was the story of Roberto Duran. Tell us a little bit about how that particular project came about, and I also know that there's a very unique way of filming these fights that were recreated for the picture. So maybe you can let us in on some of that.
Well, I was working on Grudge Match as Robert De Niro's stuntman.
Yep.
And the director who was going to do Hands of Stone came by to see how we were doing our filming because he was going to shoot this movie down in Panama.
Right.
And so after he watched us and our movie was wrapped, I got a phone call from him and he said, "Hey, I'm doing this little movie in Panama. Can you come down and help us with it?" So the little movie in Panama turned out to be 5.5 months. And a lot bigger. We had battle scenes. We had all kinds of stuff going on with it. And it turned out that Edgar Ramirez, who became a good friend of mine, was going to play the part of Roberto Duran.
Right.
Unfortunately, Edgar has never thrown a single punch, a jab, a right cross.
Nothing at all.
Even put on boxing gloves.
Wow.
Okay. Nothing at all. And here he's going to play one of the greatest boxers of all time.
Some feat.
So, yeah, I got down there early with Edgar, and we talked about nutrition and diet and getting his weight down, getting to look more like Roberto. I had him train with Roberto's sons for about a week or two, and I didn't like the atmosphere that he was getting. I didn't like where he was getting. They had him in a modern gym. It wasn't right. The ghetto in Panama to a place called Los Roqueros, where the professionals fight.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's steamy, hot, third floor, sweat. When it rains, there's buckets put out. There's holes in the floor. There's creases in the ring on the canvas. This is a nasty place.
Right.
But I hooked him up with a trainer there. We taught him how to fight, how to box. And in the end, he looked just like Roberto Duran. I mean, he worked really hard. And then every morning, I would go through the exact choreography of all of Roberto Duran's fights. Every bit of the fight action you see in there is accurate.
That's what I was getting at. That this is you get and from a boxing perspective, if you look at the Rocky movies, Jimmy Nickerson, for instance, would have gone in and worked those fights with the two actors playing the characters. But this is different. This is actual fights which are being recreated punch by punch.
That's correct. So we went through every fight, and in the morning we would have my stunt people and my boxers and my boxing doubles and Edgar go through choreography. Then in the afternoon, we'd go to the gym and we would work out our fights. And we did this throughout the whole movie. It was the most wonderful experience I could have had as a boxer. Wow. I went on to compete after that myself.
Yeah.
And it was, I had Jonathan, our director, was fabulous. He gave me the second unit, so I filmed all the fights myself, which was really gratifying for me because not only did we choreograph it, but I got the opportunity to shoot it as well.
Yeah. Did you stick with the same type of camera angles, or were you able to play with them, enabling to keep the moves but change the pace of the fight?
Yeah, I was able to do that, and even though I didn't get a chance to go into the editing portion, the director wanted us to do something different. So yeah, I experimented with a lot of things. Look, fights have been filmed forever. Yeah. There's nothing new. There's nothing new in car chases. It's all been done. It's how you shoot it and the props you can use or the atmosphere. So that's what I tried to do in that movie. Again, this was a movie like Blues Brothers 2000 that didn't come out in the box office and didn't get any notoriety until recently when it was on Netflix. Yeah, so now it's been sold to Netflix, and people are starting to see it. And we have a great cast and great boxers, and it came out really good.
Well, look, it's been an absolute joy talking to you. I don't mind saying that. I've thoroughly enjoyed our chat, and I know that all the people listening will be devouring all of this information as well. So I want to say a big thank you to you. And
when am I going to get my money?
Yeah, I think
it's in the post.
Yeah, it's probably in the post. I imagine as soon as we leave Europe officially, we're working stuff out here at the minute. It's all very complicated.
Okay, great.
Great. Yeah, we're still going to. We're working pounds, shillings, and pence. We're doing over here at the moment. So we'll try and
pay him in love.
Yeah, we'll pay you in love and devotion as we normally do. Rick, thank you very much indeed.
I know you guys have more money, Brexit and everything.
Well,
so.
Yeah. Let's not go down that direction. That's a surefire end to everything. Rick, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Okay, talk to you soon, guys.
There we are, Rick Avery.
We just landed.
We've just landed in our whirly-bird. Rick the pilot. There's nothing the man can't do. I mean,
Morse code.
He's even good at Morse code. Do you think... Oh, we should have asked him. Do you think he's responsible for the opening... on Morse? Maybe that's something that he might have done on the quiet.
Norse joke number 2. Sorry, everybody.
Okay. Tough crowd. Ooh, wow.
Yeah, one of them.
Okay. So yeah, there's not anything the guy can't do, and he's a really nice guy.
Just a gent.
Well.
Just an absolute gent.
Nice guy.
Should be more of him. More people like him, I think.
Not many people can say that they turned down Hal Needham and then became John Travolta's double. Then
became John Travolta's bodyguard.
And his bodyguard, and then became Robert De Niro's double. I mean, that's
pretty
not bad, is it?
That's top draw. Yeah. What do you do for Robert De Niro's bodyguard? I called him Bob.
Yeah. Bob. Okay. Gee. Pretty special. So yeah, that was huge fun.
I mean, think about it. There's not many people in the industry who are doubles like that. I mean, Bobby. Bobby.
Yep. There's a handful. There are a handful. Bobby, Lucy. Lucy doubles Melissa McCarthy.
Yep.
Bama.
Yeah.
does.
Blimey, who else? Who was the guy? It's the other thing the other day. Who's the Clint Eastwood double? There's always doubles in his career.
Oh,
What's his name?
Buddy Van Horn. Wayne Van Horn. Van Horn.
Make your mind up.
Yeah, it's one of them. I can't remember off the top of my
50-50.
head.
Call a friend.
It's. I'm going to say Buddy Van Horn. That's who I'm going to say.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, what's coming up next then? Or should we just not bother with that bit? Just
No.
You know what? We're just going to launch.
Do you know
one
why
when
we're
we
not
get
going to bother
one.
with it? We haven't a clue. Not a clue. We'd like to say, and next week we've got, but we don't. Not a clue. Everything is so tight to the wire at the moment that you think, right?
Anybody think this would be planned?
It's planned to a point, but we long gone. I'm afraid are the days of us going right. We've got so and so booked in because they're all working. So there we are, and next week we'd like to say what we've got next week.
Well, if we're doing anything next week, it might be 2 weeks.
Could be 2 weeks.
Could be 2 weeks.
Okay. Could wash my hair next week. You don't do yours, do you?
Well, what's left of it.
Comb yours with a wet flannel. Yes. So if we're spared, we'll see you next week.